FPL community has been very kind to me in my search for different clubs fans in order to sit down with them and discuss fixtures. I have approached quite a few, and to my surprise, I haven't had to search too hard. Today, from this very search, I'm very, very excited to speak with a Tottenham obsessed fan, as he likes to call himself. Very warm welcome to FPL Velvet. Welcome to the Tribe Talk show, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
From a non-Spurs fan perspective, I think there are a lot of changes we are seeing. Obviously, first of all, you got the Champions League spot, and I think the second, there seems to be some kind of a change in how Daniel Levy has been operating this window. There has been some money invested by the owners or the promoters. The most scary part is that this is the first proper season for Antonio Conte, and we know what he can do in his first proper season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strange time at the moment to be a Spurs fan. You know, I've been a Spurs fan for 17 years, so
Right.
I'm used to many disappointments and many collapses. Let's say, famously we always get to a decent level and then fall. But at the moment we seem to be pushing on, and all the signs are really positive, as you say.
But let's first straight away get into the fixtures. Everybody has been talking about Arsenal, City, and Liverpool's fixtures, how good they are, and how, from an FPL perspective, everybody wants to get at least 4 or 5 assets from these 3 teams minimum. So then comes the discussion about game week 1 captaincy, and suddenly, Spurs come into the picture because you guys are playing Southampton at home.
Yeah, I think it's a good captaincy option. The obvious 2 choices, Kane and Son. I think if anyone is to captain a Spurs player, it will of course be them. If I was to say now who I would captain between the 2, I'd probably just side towards Son. That's on the assumption that it's going to be a midfielder again this year, which I'm quite confident he will be. If you look at the 2 assets individually, I think there is very little between them. I think at any given time they can score. At any given time, they can assist, and this is against almost any opposition in the Premier League.
Absolutely.
So I think just the fact that Son is that midfielder, he has that higher ceiling, clean sheet point, the extra point for the goal, and that also helps him climb the bonus points as well. And he finished the season so strongly. The last couple of weeks for South Korea, he's had a couple of real good performances, scoring 2 free kicks. And that's another reason I think he will be on free kicks next season too. I think Son just pips it for me. They're both, you could captain either of them for sure.
Yeah, so the first 4 home games, which are in pink, Southampton home, Wolves home, Fulham home, and Leicester home. I don't think anybody will complain from these first 4 home games.
Yeah, they look good. At home, we had a really good record last season. I think I back us to start the season quite strongly. Just the way we ended the season with such high momentum. Even when Son, of course, won the Golden Boot on the last day against Norwich, the whole team they were truly really happy for him, right? They were supporting him, they were pushing him. When he came on, Son said in an interview, Bergwijn and Lucas Moura said to him, "We have to get you a goal, Sonny. We have to let you score." Yeah. So I think that just shows the team collective at the moment that Conte is building. Conte pre-seasons are infamous in the fact that he usually achieves so much with pre-season. I do like the look of the first 4 home games. Wolves is an odd game. I think it's quite hard to predict. I watched the video you did with Black Wolf, and Wolves are quite hard to predict at the moment. You don't quite know what you're going to get with them. Fulham, of course, newly promoted team. You don't know how they're going to struggle defensively. And Leicester traditionally is quite a high-scoring game. Whenever we play Leicester, there always seems to be 3 or even 4 goals plus.
Yeah, I think the game of the season last time was Spurs versus Leicester. The last 2 games. The last 2 goals in the last 90 seconds or something.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. First 4 away games obviously are tougher as compared to the home ones. Having said that, we all know what happened last time when you guys traveled to Etihad. There was just a bonkers game. The whole finishing, the whole counter-attacking, it was just too good. So yeah, first, like you said, I think first 8 fixtures, the home games look absolutely tasty, and I think there are 2 London derbies plus a game against City. So these 3 would be crucial. I'm assuming Conte would love to start strong if he has to kind of get into that top 2.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think the standout here is of course the away games is the Chelsea and the Man City fixtures.
Yeah.
With Chelsea, when I first saw the fixtures, first away game, so that will of course be Chelsea's first home game. Immediately, I was a bit like, "Oh, that's not great." But then I had a bit of a think about it, and it's probably quite a good time to play Chelsea. The transfer business each teams have done so far, Chelsea are looking a bit light defensively, aren't they? They let Christensen and Rudiger go, and so whether they can bring a new defender in that can then adjust in time for that game week 2 game.
True.
It's for sure it's a hard fixture, and the double up I think is viable. You know, you look at the fixture and it is difficult, but ironically, traditionally in the last years or so, we were actually first in head-to-head points in the top four.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, we had 2 draws against Liverpool. We somehow did the double over Man City. Chelsea, we usually struggle against, but I think we suit playing these high-profile top six sides because
Hmm.
we have that space that we can counter into under transition. So I think attacking wise, if we're looking at FPL assets, I think Chelsea and Man City, you can definitely go into that game with Kane or Son, potentially even both, because you know the fixtures either side of them games are really good. Haaland versus Kane is going to be a really big one,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and
And if Salah is identified as a forward,
yeah,
then it's game on.
yeah, for sure.
We'll now look at best fixture phases across the season for Spurs. So this is the first one we think 16, 17, 18, 19 game weeks. You know, home games against Leeds and Aston Villa, and away games to Brentford and Crystal Palace. If we were to look at the last season's form and then look at these two away games, I would say Crystal Palace would be the toughest out of these four.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think these are the type of games we usually struggle in. You know,
Hmm.
Brentford away was one that we struggled in. Paper, you know, we always go into those games as a Spurs fan feeling quite confident that we can get the job done. But as you say, there's always that chance that it's a banana skin. I
Yeah.
think if we're to improve next season and try and challenge Liverpool and City, which would be a really big ask, it will be to improve in these type of games because we seem to show up against in the big games. You know, I've seen a lot of information about Christian Eriksen, of course, has been
Yeah.
rumored to come. And I think if we get a player like him, a creative player, because we're missing that a little bit, I think that will enhance Kane, Son, Perisic. Because if we play, for example, Brentford and Palace, and they maybe sit back a little bit and absorb
Hmm.
pressure, and we might struggle to get a goal. The game might be 0-0 for quite a long time. I
Yeah.
think
Possibly.
if we sign a playmaker and someone who can unlock that defense, you know, we might all of a sudden get an early goal, and then all of a sudden that opens up the game.
Now, obviously, the only issue with this run is that after game week 16, there's a break for the World Cup, and then they come back from game week 17, 18, 19. So this again is not a regular season because of the World Cup. There's
Mm.
16 games for the teams who are into European competitions. There are 23 games in the first 97 days till the World Cup break. The next phase we are looking at which is obviously a bigger one. The stretch is 27 to 32, far better stretch, obviously because of the number of games. I mean, just look at those games. 4 out of these 6 teams, as in obviously 3 are sorry. So there's no Fulham. So there are 2 promoted teams: Southampton, Everton. They were fighting for relegation. Southampton to some extent. I think these are just amazing fixtures.
Heung-min Son's goal scoring home record last season, where you
Yeah.
know most of his goals came at home, and definitely captaincy option in 27 and 31 especially. For sure, I think I'd be looking at myself personally, Kane, Son, and probably defender.
Defender has to be there. It's Conte's team after all. Conte loves building it from the back, and that's what he did the very first game. I think it was against Everton, if I'm not wrong. It was Everton away game. Was Romero bought under Conte or before him?
Romero was bought just before Conte. Romero is very, very good. Honestly, he's one of the best centre backs I've ever seen. Actually, at being so aggressive and winning the ball back, he really likes to get close to attackers as soon as they get the ball played into feet. He's
Correct.
very comfortable as well, playing in tight spaces. He doesn't really pick up many injuries. He always
Hmm.
plays through a knock. So I think in that sense,
Yeah.
he's probably an asset that would be nailed. You know, we actually kept more league clean sheets than Chelsea last year, which
Yeah.
is crazy when you think everyone
Yeah.
had double Chelsea defense really at the start to the middle of the season. I was one.
There are heavy odds on Bournemouth to go down straight away.
Yeah,
A lot of people have soft corner for Nottingham Forest because they're coming back after 30 years.
that's
Uh,
right.
and the third team, Fulham is trying to do some good business as well in transfer window. Right. Let's go to the last phase that we think is just as good as the last one. Season-ending 4-game phase. So this will be very defining because we would not know where Spurs are in Champions League. We would not know where
Yeah.
they are in different cup competitions.
Towards this stage of the season, something I usually do is as much as looking at individual assets, I always try and go for assets with teams that, of course, have something to play for, so to speak.
Exactly.
You know, the top 6 teams like Spurs, for example, will have a deeper squad than these teams. So you'd like to think maybe over at this stage of the season, we're a little bit fitter as well. That might play into the hands of playing the likes of Leeds, who have quite a thin squad, although they're doing some great business, and same goes for Brentford as well. So I think these are really good fixtures here. The Brentford away game could be quite tough, but I think Brentford will have a good season this year.
Yeah, and it's the last game of the season. Like this season, when it was ending, when we were trying to get assets on board in our team, FPL team, there was a huge discussion about teams on the beach. Brentford didn't look like that they want to be on the beach, and so did Aston Villa. We saw the last game of the season how they were about to clinch a win against City. So
Yeah, that's right.
you never know. But the two home games that you have here, Crystal Palace will be without Gallagher, and Leeds, I'm 100% sure, will be without Rafinha. Let's take a look at the fixtures against the top six teams. The interesting thing about this is the first four games against are all away games. So all are right. There's no like a huge gap between
Yeah.
the weeks. So that also shows that they as you saw in the best fixture phases, that they really don't have like a huge phase of good run. Do you think playing first four away games early in the season before the World Cup, can be advantageous later on?
These games are tricky because in terms of getting a result, I'd always be hopeful but not too confident. But that's just
Right.
traditionally, we'd struggle in these games, but we've got a lot better in fighting against teams that are, so to speak, above us at the moment. And looking at these first four games in 2, 7, and 9 and 12, it's kind of a stage where if you have a Spurs asset, I think it's definitely keep and play, but not captain. I think against Liverpool, you'd know yourself, we'd always play well, but you'd always somehow win. I think there's always a goal in us in these games. So I think
Yeah.
if it's a case of that you have Son or Kane, definitely don't be afraid to play them. We really do play better and we're more suited to playing into space. And the likes of
Right.
City, Liverpool, Chelsea, they'll always look to have the ball, keep possession, and try and break us down. And that leaves them vulnerable with their high line, with the space.
If you see the numbers 2, 7, 9, 12, that also means that you can always have one asset throughout the whole season. Pretty well spaced. There is, apart from 33, 34, there is no back to back, which could be, and especially if it's a double game week or plus a midweek or something like that, coming after Champions League, that can be tricky.
I mean, that's a really good point. Actually, I've just thought of it here. Especially after the World Cup, I'm not sure how the Premier League are going to arrange it, but there's probably going to be a fair few double game weeks, of course, to put the fixtures in, given the fact that there's been a break.
Yeah.
So when you look at that 20, 22, 25, 33, up until you get to that stage, there's no back-to-back difficult games, as you say. So, for example, I mean, we could have a double game week of, I don't know, City and I don't know who else, maybe Fulham, for example. That's still a good double game week. So, given the fact that they're at home as well, I think when you look at the Arsenal game in the North London derby, of course, recently, which I think more or less decided the top four. I mean, the fans were just unbelievable. I think at home, if we can try and make it more of a fortress, I know that's something Conte's said to the fans in press conferences.
Yep.
He wants it to be more of a fortress. I think, given the mood of the club at the moment, and if at this stage we're still in a good position coming back from the World Cup, I think although those four games are tough, they're all at home, so it could be a bit of a big swing for us.
Absolutely, and Spurs have players, many players, if not all, who are in the playing 11 for the national squad. I think the quarterfinals end on 10th of December. Most of the teams will be out by the quarterfinals. Only 4 teams would be left. So it won't be too much of a problem. It's a decent rest from 10th to 26th. So it depends on manager to manager how much break they want to give to their players coming back. Right. As we spoke about the transfer business very, very briefly in the introduction of the show, I think Spurs has done 3 signings, if I'm not wrong, in obviously this man Perisic, Bissouma, and obviously Foster in terms of, I'm sure it's a backup for Lloris. How do you see these especially the Bissouma and Perisic transfer, because everybody has now, it's obviously eyeing Perisic to really get him in the gaming one team straight away.
If FPL do the right thing and make Perisic a defender, for me, it's almost, I see him as good as an option as what Cancelo was at the beginning of last season. I think he's played wing back for Inter Milan for the past 2 seasons. He got, I think it was 15 or 14 goals and assists in the Serie A last season from wing back. So that just goes to show his attacking threat. And I'd expect him to be valued at maybe 6 would probably be a good price for him. I think when you think about, as I said earlier, the clean sheets we kept last season, 16 clean sheets. I'd expect that to improve this season. I know Conte is really looking at Bastoni, Pau Torres. A left-sided centre-back is very much a priority position in the window as well. So I'd expect us to get one of those players in the line, and that will help us defensively.
Yeah.
And then Perisic going forward, of course, we know Conte's wing-backs is such a fundamental way of how the team forms. The way we progress the ball up the pitch is very reliant on them. And traditionally as well, when one wing-back goes forward, the other one will go forward alongside him, but a little bit above, if you know what I mean. So you'll have a scenario where Doherty would cross the ball. You'd have Kane and Son in the middle, but Perisic would be making a run often beyond Kane and Son to try and get on the end of a loose cross. A player as good as Perisic is, traditionally being a winger in his career, he's very good in front of goal. He's composed. He gets assists, he gets goals, and if he's arriving late in the box on the end of Doherty crosses, I can see him getting a few goals and a few assists this year. And there's been a lot said as well on his age. Of course, he's quite old. Given it for football terms, 33 years old. But I've been reading a lot from Serie A journalists, and they've said he's got a very, very good engine. And although he's old, he kind of has a physical body of someone in their mid-20s. He's very fit for his age. So,
and I think the presence of Bissouma would obviously, as a defensive midfielder, would definitely force these wing backs to really just push forward because Bissouma is so amazing in terms of his defensive capabilities as well, and while just pushing through the ball, passing the ball through those narrow lanes. I think to some extent Bissouma's and his signing are really kind of correlated.
I think so. I think Bissouma, as you say, is one of the best midfielders in the league at being press resistant and playing in tight spaces, and he is great at ball recoveries. He will recover the ball and probably immediately look to play it down the channels. So I think Bissouma's signing helps us with that transition in midfield, getting the ball from defensive midfield to the wing back positions.
Right.
And then the wing backs will probably carry it forward and look to create chances.
Who else do you think is the deal is more doable?
Okay, so from what I've seen, there's four priority positions. There is the left centre back, the right wing back, a winger, and a striker. Left centre back, I think we're probably looking at Ndika, Bastoni, Pau Torres. Those are the three main targets, I believe. And then right wing back, we're very heavily linked with Jed Spence. I was in a Twitter space last night, and it was a reasonably tier one source for Spurs. His name's Paul O'Keefe. A lot of followers. Is very, very reliable. And he was saying that he's quite confident that Jed Spence will get done. So I think Jed Spence probably at 4.5 would be a really good option. I think from what I've heard, Conte has been tracking him personally, and he really wants the director of football, Paratici, to get the job done and sign him. I think there's been murmurs on Twitter that if he was to join, who gets that first place spot, him or Doherty? And the way I see it is if Conte really likes this Jed Spence guy, and there's a rumor of the fee being in around 20 million. If he's pushing for the deal to get done and the fee is as high as 20 million, you'd like to think that he really sees him as a successful fit for that right wing back role. So maybe it would be a case of him going almost straight into the team. And then, of course, we've seen Rafinha, Richarlison, I think as well for FPL terms. That probably isn't great for Kulusevski. So I think this year is going to be so hard for benchings and predicting teams. It's going to be a lot of cruel 59th minute substitutions, I think, too.
Yeah, and also being in Champions League, Conte is not going to let this opportunity go. He would love to stay in Champions League. So, he would need so many legs, so many fresh legs. It wouldn't be, and how pressing the game is at times for Spurs, it could be. And Champions League is something which he hasn't. Has he won a Champions? I don't think he has won a Champions League till now.
But I think he'll probably look to improve that. I think he said it before in terms of the press conferences, and the difference in our recruitment has really been the director of football, Fabio Paratici. He's made such a difference. He's changed the entire philosophy. As you mentioned, the board have injected 150 million of capital into the club.
Right.
So it really is unusual for us Spurs fans to see the owners be so ambitious, if you'd like. I think Daniel Levy and the hierarchy, I think, have realised that this is a crossroads where if this falls through, then every type of project Spurs have had over the past few years has failed. Different managers, Pochettino, Mourinho, they're very different styles. So if this Conte project fails, then the fans will be up in arms, because how do you go forward?
And speaking of Daniel Levy, I don't think he's going to get a better manager than this guy. And if he doesn't back him, I'm not really sure when is he going to back anybody ever. I'm sure it's exciting times for Spurs fans as well. What would be an okay target for you guys as Spurs fans, and by okay I mean a realistic target?
Realistic expectation, I think, would be to
Hmm.
get into the top four again, right? I think for the league target, I think to maintain that Champions League status and
Yeah.
get a top four position, I think is a realistic expectation. I think we've built on from last season. But I think given that we're progressing as well, I think a realistic expectation is top four. I think challenging Liverpool and City is just so incredibly difficult. Not just good they are, in one-off games, Spurs have shown that we can beat them and that
Yeah.
we can compete. But it's that consistency that City
Correct.
and Liverpool managed
Absolutely.
to keep.
Yeah.
So I think if we're to try and challenge the consistency I'm looking for, I think we can probably challenge. And I think a third spot could be looking okay.
Yeah. No, as you rightly said, I would, all the 3-4 factors that you just mentioned, I would say got to stay in the Champions League. And this is what Liverpool was going through when Klopp had just come in.
Yeah.
And he got the Champions League in the very first full season. In fact, Conte has done him better. Yeah, after that, nobody was looking for a title. We were just looking for consistent Champions League because that's obviously from the revenue perspective, from attracting the talent perspective, everything. Exciting times for Liverpool, for Spurs. It's going to be a special window for you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks once again.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. Delighted to come on, and really enjoyed it.